Hi, welcome to this Hope for HIE's Child Life Q&A on supporting children, families, and memory after loss. I'm Kimberly Taylor. I'm Hope for HIE's social work intern, and I'm here with our amazing child life specialist, Annie Gunning. Annie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. So happy to be here again. I love doing these child life Q&As. This one is for our Hope for HIE Remembrance Day, which is on Monday. But as a child life specialist, my job is to support children and families through medical experiences to increase understanding and psychosocial support and decrease the stress and anxiety they experience. And so along with this, obviously goes grief too, because there's grief with diagnosis, and there can be different stages of grief along just a diagnosis journey. So I'm here today to help support our families.
Awesome. So I appreciate that you mentioned grief. So this is about, remembrance. We're focusing on remembrance and celebrating your child, but as Annie said, grief is a part of our journey. And so as grief feelings can feel different or change, like during specific days like this Remembrance Day, grief is a natural and normal response to losing someone we love. And so for children and adults, remembering the person who died can be important a part of how we continue, that relationship over time. So Annie, I know that you've mentioned that children often worry that they might forget the person who died, and remembering can help them hold on to these meaningful connections and memories. So I want to know why is remembering somebody who died? Why is this important?
Yes, of course. It's a good question. And I should have shared too, as I'm a child life specialist, I'm also a certified grief counselor. So I've been a child life specialist for many, many years, and I've been a grief counselor now for a few years as well. So, yeah, kids do want to make sure, or we do want to make sure that they know that this is important, that they remember their person who died. So there's a lot of research out there that highlights that remembrance helps families maintain that connection and that meaning after loss. So remembering helps children know that their loved one continues to matter and is still part of their family's story. So just because they're not physically there, they're still a part of that family and they're still a part of that story, and it's important to acknowledge that. And many grieving children, they worry about forgetting memories, and
Mhm.
remembrance activities like the ones that we're sharing can help preserve those memories. So talking about the person helps them normalize their grief. It shows children that it's safe to remember. We want children to know that it's okay to talk about their person and encourage them to talk about their person and their sibling who died. And then also just acknowledging and letting them know memories can bring both sadness and comfort, but those are both okay. Like you can have happiness and sadness coexist at the same time, but that's normal. So just acknowledging that and letting them know. And remembering it doesn't mean you're staying stuck in grief. It's about allowing the relationship and the love to continue in new ways.
So I love how you phrase that. How then can families remember their child or their sibling if it's the children? How can in
Mhm.
everyday life, like what can they do
Sure. And I
daily?
should continuously say sibling, because that is what we're remembering now is I do focus on grief support for children. I like to support parents as well, but my focus, I know how to do it with kids. So I'll say sibling, I might say their person, because I work with, in another part of my life, I work with all families who've lost different types of family members. So just kind of bear with me as I keep saying their person. So encouraging just simple and natural ways of remembrance. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It doesn't have to be this grand gesture that includes, all these huge moments. Memory activities can help children express feelings and preserve meaningful connections after loss. So often, just some examples. Families often find meaning in sharing funny or meaningful stories about their person who died, talking about them in everyday conversation, looking at photos, or looking at those memory items or touching those memory items, snuggling them, letting that child have those memory items and keeping them close, cooking their favorite foods, listening to music that reminds you of them, saying their name, and including them in family memories when talking about your family. So saying we have three children, because you do still have three children. They're just in different places. And then keeping a memory or a comfort item. So what's something that you can keep? So these are all, I think, and Kimberly, you and I have talked about this, just simple everyday types of things that families can do. So children often take cues also from adults. So when kids see the parents or the grown-ups or the adults in their life talking about the child, it also gives them permission. They know that it's okay and they can talk about them as well. And they're in a safe space and it's emotionally safe for them to do that.
And I love that you mentioned like these are they're meaningful but very simple activities. They doesn't have to be, if doing something, a grand gesture is your thing, that's phenomenal, but don't feel like you have to, that's kind of what it sounds like. And then
Right.
so not go ahead.
I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, I feel like I've heard families feel the pressure. I've heard families say they feel pressure when they see another family who's had a loss. They do these wonderful things and start organizations, which is so phenomenal. And I just think that's incredible that they can do that, but that's not what every family wants to do. And this is just to point out that that's okay if that's not your thing to do. Every family honors their person in different ways.
Absolutely. And so those are every day. What about when it's like birthdays or anniversaries or like a really
Hmm.
difficult date? How can families remember their child or their sibling then?
Definitely, yes. Special dates. I feel like special dates in transition can bring up stronger emotions, or even the days leading up to those special
Mm.
dates can bring up really mixed feelings, big emotions. So intentional remembrance practices can be helpful. Some families choose to acknowledge the day with friends and family members, and others choose to just keep it quiet and close at home, just doing something with their immediate family. Both are valid, and neither is one is better than the other. It's just what you want to do to honor your person. And so some ideas, just some general ideas that families can use for these birthdays or anniversaries, or just any kind of difficult day, or I don't know, a special day, some type of day that has meaning to you, really. Lighting a candle, visiting a meaningful place like a park or eating outside, going to a certain restaurant, a vacation spot, a church, or a place of faith, writing letters or drawing pictures. I feel like that's always good for like our younger kids. They can just draw pictures and leave a picture out. And maybe that's for their sibling. Creating a memory table or a photo display can also be helpful. So I actually just talked to a couple kids yesterday, and now that they've moved into this new home, they said they have this display and it's their dad, and then lots of his different items that they have in a certain area of their house, like at their new house. So, like, it can be simple things like that. Doing an activity the child loved. Like, what are some things that really made them smile or made them happy, or you really have good memories of? So, is it swimming or visiting a zoo or just watching their favorite show or movie? Acts of kindness in their honor. Sometimes, if there was something that they were really into, you can do something like for an organization that honors that type of activity. And then creating a small family ritual. Maybe you're just going to sing happy birthday just together as a family, and that's all you need to do. Or cook dinner at home and celebrate that way. It doesn't even need to be like this huge thing. It can be like, that's all we're going to do. I had another family I recently worked with, and the girl told me it just seemed like it was too soon to celebrate the birthday.
Mhm.
I wasn't ready to celebrate it. So when they didn't do a cake or anything, they just went somewhere together as a family. And so that was
So
their way to celebrate.
do what feels right for you and for your family in that time. Don't feel like you have to do more
Absolutely.
than what you're ready for. So kind of going along with that
Yes.
then, you know, parents have lost a child and they're also trying to support their living children. So while the parents are grieving, like how are they how can they be mindful of their own grief while also then, you know, supporting their living children who are also grieving?
Right. And I have not experienced this, but I can imagine this is probably one of the hardest things in the world to do, because not only are you trying to cope with this profound loss and change and everything yourself, but you have another child you're still trying to parent and help support in their grief. And we know our kids are looking to us for modeling that coping, right?
Mhm.
So it's just, I think one thing I would definitely say, and I have said to many parents, just give yourself grace too, of course. The main thing and is just availability for them and being there for them. That's like the main thing. You can just being open to communication and being available. Many parents worry that they need to hide their grief and hide how they're feeling, but children benefit from seeing authentic emotion. Seeing emotions teaches them that feelings are okay, and then it teaches them how to cope with it too, because they're watching your coping skills. It's okay. Like, if I'm really sad, I'm going to cry. I just had a conversation with a kid today. He's like, well, I don't like it to talk about it because then everybody in my family will start crying. And I'm like, well, that kind of seems like a normal reaction when you're sad, right? He's like, yeah, I guess so. So it's okay for your kids to see that. Support, it doesn't mean having all the answers. The most helpful thing, like I said, is just the availability, honesty, simple language. That's what we want to provide to our kids. And this is not easy. I'm not saying easy things. Like, I know this is not an easy thing for a parent, obviously. Letting children ask questions over and over and revisit stories. So kids need things repeated. We might tell them something, and especially because this is this big, huge, hard thing that happened, usually we need to even kind of say it in a developmental level, even younger than what they could typically understand. And so they will keep coming back and maybe ask the same questions, or maybe they just want to hear those stories over and over again. Keeping routines for kids is really important. That's how they thrive. Routine and predictability helps children feel safe. That's how they thrive. But also knowing that there is some flexibility in there. So if there is, if we do need to like change things up, they do need to miss school because things are really hard, or you just can't get them there, that's okay too, right? There's room for flexibility, of course. And there's allowing children to express their grief through play, through art, music, of course, conversation. But a lot of time kids express themselves through behavior instead of using words. Like, we might see things that really is their expression. So allowing them to just play, to have those moments for art and movement, that can also just help with the grieving process.
So, you're thinking about these children, and they can be a variety of ages, right? Like toddlers to teenagers. How and why how do the children grieve differently from adults?
Yes, we for sure know, we know kids grieve. We know kids from the very youngest of ages grieve. There's research, a lot of research that has been done that shows that, kids grieve, but they do grieve differently. We call them, kids are more, they're puddle jumpers. So they're in and out of grief. They move in and out of it. Unlike adults, they can't sit in it for long periods of time. They can kind of step into it for a little bit, then they're back to playing and doing their daily life. And that's okay. That's what we expect them to do. That's how they process and understand what they're doing. They just can't be in it like we can all the time. So, another way to say it, like that, we say puddle jumpers. So rather than swimming in the ocean like adults do, they're in and out. So that's kind of the analogy, and that's normal for them. I would expect that of them. So you might see kids playing and laughing shortly after crying. That's normal. You might tell them something and have a really sad discussion, and they're like, okay, and they run off and play, or I'm going to go hang out with my friends. That's normal. They ask the repeated questions about the death. Again, this is normal. They're trying to understand it. Expressing grief through behavior, like I just said, or play. So trying to just express themselves. They're not always going to talk about it. So these are just some of the things we need to be aware of. Watching their play, watching their behavior, and just noticing if they're like having a lot of outbursts. Maybe that really isn't just like bad behavior. That's probably that grief coming through. They just don't know how to say it. They don't know what they're feeling. And so it's coming out through behavior. And they process grief in small pieces over time. So these shifts, they're normal. Children process in small pieces over time based on their developmental level. So as they reach a new developmental stage, they're understanding and processing their relationship with their person, the death with their person, and how to cope with it in a new way. That's why they need that repeated stories. They need their questions answered, because when they were 4 versus when they were 7 and then 12, they're understanding it in a different way. And then you can work on those remembrance activities during those periods too, as a way of coping.
Like the developmental shifts, their way that they're going to handle their grief is going to shift as they go through their developmental stages. And so the idea, there's been the idea that, children don't grieve. Well, that's just, as you said,
Yeah.
that's not the case. And I wanted to get the next question about so like, what are some types of grief families might experience? But this makes me have another question tied with that. Like, if families, and maybe you'll touch on this, but if the sibling is born after the child who's died, like, is that child still grieving? What type of grief might that be? So when we think about different types of grief, what are
Yeah.
some, that's not like your typical what you think of grief,
Right.
right? This child
Right.
didn't know.
Yeah.
So what are some
Right.
types
They
of
didn't
griefs
know.
that,
Right.
family
They,
experience?
yeah, they didn't know, but they know that there was this person that was a part of their family, that was there before them, and they still hear stories and they still might see items. So it is definitely still a part of their story too. So yeah, and like we mentioned in the beginning, while we know what this really is a focus on, we want to talk about Remembrance Day, but we also have to talk about the grief in this, and it can take on a couple, in different types of form. Grief can include the person who died, and then like mentioning the life and how life changes that follow, or maybe how things are different now, right? So there's there's two different types of grief that I just wanted to touch on, or like loss. I feel like there's many different layers and levels and things like that, but secondary loss, these are additional changes or losses that happen after a death. So like, think of more like your relationship with that person. So maybe changes in routines or structure. There's lots of changes that happen after that person is gone. So you're no longer doing these same things. Oh, every Sunday we went and did this because of our person. That's no longer happening. So whatever you were doing that day, that's a loss. That's a change. That's hard. So along with that comes those support roles. So maybe now you no longer have a connection with their teacher, with those doctors, with their therapist. Those are losses too. Changes in roles or identity. I'm no longer a big sister. I'm not a big sister anymore because my sibling is gone. You are. You're still a big sister. It's just very different now than what it was. So just those changes in roles. In the thoughts of missing future milestones, graduations, those big things, but any kind of small things too. Just your birthdays, right? Certain ends at the end of the school year, at the start of a new school year, weddings, like all of those are all additional losses that can be triggering and bring on that grief. And then also with kids, the parents are emotionally unavailable during their own grief in some ways. Like their parent is different than they were before. And so that is a loss for that child and how their parent is now based on how they were before. And then another loss is just ambiguous loss. So feeling that it's unresolved or unclear, it was sudden, it was traumatic, and just you didn't have a chance to say goodbye. You didn't feel like anything was resolved. So those are kind of the two that are talked about quite a bit, I feel like. Does that answer your question? Does that help?
Yeah. It was just something I have, a topic that's come up in the community a little bit with when the sibling was born after. So, and then it's like, it's not that the child never existed, and it's not that,
Right.
sorry, I wanted to ask
Yeah.
that question.
Definitely
Yeah.
important to still keep that involved and talk to that sibling about the baby or the child that was there before them. Tell them all about them so that they know that like that is a part of their family. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's kind of go back to the remembrance then. So what helps families carry remembrance over time?
Sure. Children share that connection, and shared like continuous storytelling helps them feel and helps them integrate their loss into their lives. So we know children have reported that they like talking about their person who died. They like when people ask them about that. Now, I think this is always general. Everybody's different. Every family is different. And I've had a lot of kids tell me sometimes it depends on who asks me about it. Like if it's somebody they know really well versus somebody they do not know at all. Obviously that makes a difference too. But just in general, families often they find healing in creating ongoing family traditions of remembrance, things that they can just do as a family that has meaning to them. Sharing stories across generations. So kind of like what we just mentioned, especially if there was a sibling that was born that they never met, having other family members share stories about them. So hearing the grandparents share their relationship with them, hearing the aunts and uncles, the cousins, mom and dad, like all the different family members share their stories about their relationship with them, because everybody has different stories to share about their relationship. And allowing the grief to change over time. It's always going to be there. It's always there, but it's going to change over time. You're moving forward, your grief will just change. Connecting with supportive communities. So who's around you that can be helpful? Is it a church? Is there a group at church? Is there our Hope for HIE loss parent loss group? Is there somebody local? Like I have here, we have a local grief organization that has a group for parents who have lost a child. So is there someone near you? Those supportive communities who you can relate to. And then giving children opportunities to express themselves and revisit those memories. Just again, letting them know that it's okay to do those things. You can have these conversations. We can do these things in honor, in memory of your brother or your sister. So remembering a child is in your family. I think I'm back.
Yeah.
Each family finds their own way to just carry that love forward. So whatever that looks like for a family, like you said, it's whatever's meaningful for you. So
No, I think, and so I love that we've done this Q&A. It's about remembering, but also recognizing that remembrance comes with a lot of other emotions, and that those emotions, like that are tied to grief, are normal. They're natural.
right.
Parents are grieving, the kids are grieving, and you got to give yourself grace and just do what you feel comfortable doing and what feels meaningful to you in that
Mm-hmm.
moment.
Yep.
And recognizing, I think it's so important, as you said, recognizing that children do grieve differently
Yeah.
than parents, adults do, and then that's going to change
Mm-hmm.
over time. Um,
Yep. Definitely.
yeah, I
Yeah.
thank you so much, Annie.
Yeah, of course. And I also, like I had said at the beginning, this is just very general information. If there's anyone who wants individualized support, I am definitely available for individualized support that I can help with. If you have a child, if you've lost a child and you know that a sibling needs some help or some ideas on how to support them and help them cope, please reach out to me and I am happy to help you and just meet your family where they're at.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Annie.
Yeah.